Hello and welcome to Flying Bobbins. I'm Liz and today I'm going to talk you through how to make the Charlie Caftan by Closet Core patterns. It's a super popular pattern. I've seen loads of these and they look great. So I'm going to make the long one, which is option C. I've got some lovely Atelier Brunette crepe fabric with this lovely palm design on it, perfect for the lovely hot summer weather we're having. Got my thread and my interfacing, so I'm all ready to go. Now if you fancy sewing along with me, then you can get your Charlie Caftan and a kit as well, including everything you need to make this gorgeous style from flyingbobbins.com. And I've got a fabulous selection of fabrics for you to choose from, including beautiful printed viscose fabrics, very floaty and soft, cool double gauze fabrics with gold print, lots and lots of choices of fabrics for you. So please do take a look and you can enjoy sewing along with me as we make our Charlie Caftans. So I've got my pattern, my interfacing, my thread and my fabric. Now the first thing that you want to do is to wash the fabric. I always wash on a short spin, a cool wash or a 30 degree on a delicate setting, and then I hang my fabric up to dry. And then I've pressed it in half, selvage to selvage. So my fabric is prepped. Let's move that out the way just for a second and take a look at our pattern. So in your Charlie pattern, you have a few different choices. You can either make a long dress, a short dress, and with the short dress style, you can either do it with these darts here, these kind of stylish diagonal darts, or you can go for a gathered version. And with the maxi dress version, you also have these waist ties here. There's also an optional pocket included as well. So there's a few different choices for you to think about. With the sleeve, you can choose to have a traditional sleeve opening or a dropped sleeve opening. And which one you go for depends on how modest you want to be and whether this is designed to be worn over the top of swimwear or designed to be worn as a dress. So obviously the lower dropped sleeve armhole will kind of reveal a little bit of the side. So taking a look at the sizes on this pattern, it goes from a 0 up to a 20, and this is an American pattern. So try to ignore those numbers if you can, because they are slightly different from UK sizes that we're used to. So just have a look at the measurements instead, and you've got bust, waist and hip in both centimetres and inches there for you. So just measure yourself and decide which size you want to go for. Don't worry about which number that ends up, because it might be different from what you'd normally be in the UK shops. And underneath there, it just tells you how much fabric you'd need for each of those sizes across each of those styles. Inside our pattern envelope, we have the pattern itself printed on this tissue paper. The one that I've been sent for this tutorial is actually a PDF, so I've got sort of white paper. But if you've bought this pattern, you'll have this lovely soft tissue paper there with clear blue lines printed on it. And then you've got your beautifully illustrated and detailed instruction booklet there to help you as well with each stage. And I should be following these instructions as I sew my caftan and talking you through each bit. You've got a handy sheet at the back there for your project details and adjustments, skills learned, things to practice, things that you've, the notes so that when you make it again, you can remember all those things that you learned. So I've taken my measurements, I've just written them down on the side there of the pattern, and then I've just written down which size they correspond to. Now you might find, like me, that when you measure yourself, you don't fit exactly into one size. It might be that your bust is here, your waist is there, your hips are there, or the other way around. Obviously all our bodies are different, that's how it should be. So just what I tend to do is I just jot down somewhere on the pattern or on a piece of paper my bust, waist and hips, and then I look and write down next to that which size I am. And if you go across more than one size, all you have to do is just on these multi-size patterns where you've got all of the sizes like this, is you just come in from whichever size you are on one measurement and then draw a line to join whichever size you are on the other measurements. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not tricky at all. The one thing that you have to do with that is just make sure that whatever you do on one pattern piece, you do exactly the same thing on all of the pattern pieces so that everything matches up together. I've zoomed the camera out so we can get a bit of a better look at this pattern. So there's 3 A0 pieces, and you can see that each piece has got the name and the letter to describing what it's for. So I need to figure out what I'm going to be cutting out. I'm definitely going to do the pocket because I'm going to add a pocket into mine. So I'll colour in with the highlight of the bits that I want to do. Now the caftan, this is for view B and C, which is the maxi one and the gathered shorter one, and this is view A. So I'm going to do C, so I need to cut that out. This is the back neckline facing, it's for all versions. The front neckline facing, all versions. So just go through and figure out which bits we need. And this is view A, so I'm not going to need to worry about that one. And then just hiding down here at the bottom, we've got view C, waist tie, so I am going to need that. So go through all the 3 sheets and figure out which pieces you're going to need to cut. So let's focus first on these pieces. So A doesn't mean it's for style A, by the way, that means that's the name of the piece, it's piece A. And then if you read underneath here, it says this is the front view for B and C. Okay, it's the same front view for B or C, it's just whether you make it short or maxi. And you've got piece A here, which is the top, and piece A here, which is the bottom, and you stick those together along overlapping these dotted lines here and here to join them to make one big maxi dress length pattern piece. So I'm just going to put that skirt to one side for now, because we're going to talk about, before I stick them together, I just want to make it clear about what I'm going to do with the sizing. So if you remember, I was a size 6 bust going to a size 10 waist and a size 12 on the hips. So what I want to do is look at which line that corresponds to for me. So they start off here with the smaller size, and then these different dashed lines work out to the bigger sizes. So we start at size 0 and then we go to size 20. So size 6 is 1, 2, 3, is the 4th one in, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the size 6 line is this dash dot, dash dot, dash dot, dash dot. Now it can get quite confusing when you're cutting out, so what I like to do is just get my highlighter pen and I'm just going to highlight that dash dot line. And then so when I am cutting out, it's going to be nice and easy for me. So this bit here looks like it steps in, and then I'm following that dash dot. Can you see how it steps in and then goes? We've got this funny sort of Z shape. Dash dot, and it's obviously the 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 2, 4, 6. So all around this top part, I'm cutting the size 6. When the lines come in together and they're really merging, just, you know, try your best to find a nice line that you can follow. Now these lines here are all the same, so I don't need to highlight them, they're all the same. And then what we need to think about is, I'm going to come in here on this dash dot line there, and that's to the bust. And then I need to think about coming out to a size 10 at the waist. So that's another 2 lines in. So this notch here I'm going to take as the waist position. So if I come down to a size 6 here, that's there, but I want to go out to a size 10 there, which is this one here. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So all I want to be able to do is just to blend that line from a 6 to a 10, and then do exactly the same on the back as well. Now the other thing to consider at this point is whether you want to do the standard armhole opening or the dropped armhole opening. If you're going to do the dropped armhole opening, just continue that line down here, and then you'll bring it around this curve here. It says here, cut here for high sleeve, cut here for low sleeve. So I'm going to do a high sleeve because I know that my upper part of my body is very short, and it might not work so well for me to have that low sleeve option. If you're slightly taller, you might want to do that. If you want it to be more open and kind of, you're definitely going to be wearing this on the beach over swimwear, so you don't mind it being quite open there. or you're going to wear it over like a little bandeau or something, you could have quite an open one. But I'm going to use the smaller sleeve hole opening for this, and so I'm just going to follow that line. Now what I want to do is just to make a decision on where I'm going to start that line. I'm going to start it there at where this curved line starts to straighten off, and I'm just going to draw a diagonal line across there. So that's just going to kick out from a 6 to a 10. I would never go straddle more than 2 sizes, by the way. Try and, you know, 1 or 2 sizes is fine to do that sort of from. Now, the other thing to think about is you've got a load of ease here, because this is all going to get gathered in with those waist ties, so it's not as if it's a very fitted style. So, you know, don't worry too much about if your bust is a bit smaller and then your waist is a bigger measurement, you know, because your waist does have, you are going to have a lot of spare fabric around this area to gather in. What I'm going to do now is continue then along the size 10. But when I get to this notch, I want to kick out 1 size to a 12. So again, I'm going to draw that line from the waist notch to the high hip notch, coming out from a 10 to a 12. And that gives us a nicer line anyway there. So it just goes zip like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is when I go on to my, so this is my front piece, when I go onto my back piece, I should just do exactly the same again. In fact, looking at that there, it might be better just to actually kind of, thinking about it, might be a better line to just kind of shave off a little bit there, because I have got that extra ease, and just then I've got a lovely straight line coming from the size 6 at the bust to the size 12 at the hip. Now just give me that little bit of extra fabric around my bottom. And then I'll just continue on the rest of the pattern to cut that size 12. And if I find that that eases a little bit too much, I can always take it in. But what I don't want is for it to be a little bit too tight, because then it's much more difficult to let it out. So all I've done there is I've followed the size 6 line here, come round that curve and then shimmied out to make it a bit sort of almost between an 8 and a 10 at the waist, and then up to a 12 at the hip, going from a 6 at the bust. So that's how you just work with these multi-size patterns, and it might be that you fit into one of those sizes perfectly. Like I say, this isn't a heavily fitted style, so don't worry too much. It's just I am used with every sewing pattern I do always end up doing this sort of alteration on the pattern where I come in at a very small round the shoulders and around the top part of my body, and I come out a bit bigger at the waist and hips. So that's very typical for me to have to do that. So if you take your measurements and see how they map out, you might be more comfortable just to stick with the same size all the way through, which is fine if you're not that far off, because I know that I'm much smaller on top than I am down below, typical pear shape. Then I tend to kind of do that pattern alteration. When you come to cutting around this bit, just be aware, if you're a 20, you're cutting the innermost line, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, so I'm cutting a 6, so I'm cutting that line. So don't cut all the way, just cut so far as your size says. I've also highlighted the notches there that I want to cut, so it's just sort of makes it easier to see when you've got a lot of different lines going on if you highlight the notches as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so 0, 2, 4, 6, I know that it's that notch, that one's actually got a 6 on it. There you go, so I know which notch, and then down here I've come out to a 12, so it's that notch there. In the middle there, I'm on the kind of in between. As long as you do the same on the front and the back, you'll be fine. So here are all my pattern pieces cut out. They're quite difficult actually to fit on the screen, so I'll just talk through them and hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. So first of all, we've got our back view here, and I've just sellotape those two pieces together so that they overlap at the dotted lines. So the dotted lines are sitting on top of each other. If I was making the short caftan, I'd cut at this line here, but I'm going to make the long one. If you want to lengthen or shorten your pattern, you would slash along this grey line and either pull those pattern pieces apart, putting a bit of paper in the middle, or overlap them and blend in the line there, if you want to make that longer or shorter. And there is a finished garment measurements chart in your booklet, so you can see about the length there. I've then got my back neck facing, which just will fit around the back neck there, so that's the back. I've got my tie, which is this long narrow piece there, and then I've got my front of my caftan. So on my front of my caftan, again, I've got exactly the same shaping as I have on the back, where I shaped it from a 6 down to a 12, and I've got my facing that sits on the neckline there. I've got this square piece here, which will sit here for that sort of fancy gathered front piece. And I've got my pocket there, which will sit just in between those notches there. Again, making the shorter one you'll cut here, longer one you cut at the longer line. You can slash along this grey line to lengthen or shorten, and overlap here on those dotted lines. So those are all the pieces of my paper pattern cut out and ready to start cutting our fabric.